beat the worshippers with batons. Mohammed al-Qasem is in occupied East Jerusalem. Earlier in the programme, Mohammed, we heard that clip from Netanyahu saying he has the support of the Israeli public for his war and hitting back at criticism from Biden. So what is the attitude to the war and to the changing American stance in Israel?
Well, there is anger against Prime Minister Netanyahu for this continued tension between Israel and the U.S. and many Israelis who have taken to the streets every Saturday and sometimes Charlotte during the week protesting, demanding that Netanyahu resigns, demanding new elections to be held, have accused the Prime Minister of putting this strategic historic relationship between Israel and the U.S. At risk. The opposition said the same thing. Former Prime Ministers, not just one prime minister, former prime ministers like Ehud Olmert, Ehud Barak and Yair Lapid, all accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of mismanaging the war, of mishandling of the war, and also of hurting the relationship between the U.S. and Israel. And let's not forget that just last week we had Minister of the War Cabinet Benny Gantz visiting Washington for the specific reason to try to smooth the relationship between Israel and the U.S. and now having President Joe Biden publicly criticizing Netanyahu, whose ego everyone knows that it's tremendously huge and he has thin skins and doesn't accept criticism from anyone, has put together this quick interview with Politico, according to Israeli media, to respond to President Biden. But it seems also that Prime Minister Netanyahu have forgotten, or maybe he's dismissing the thousands of Israelis who've been taken to the streets. He's also dismissing one poll after another since October. In fact, we can go as far back as last year with the controversial judicial reforms and the hundreds of thousands of Israelis that took to the streets against those controversial judicial reforms. And since October, the thousands of Israelis, including families and relatives of those captives in Gaza who have been demonstrating against him. They're not anti-war, but they are definitely against him. And one poll after another proves then that the popularity of Prime Minister Netanyahu is declining steeply. He's been seeing his favorability numbers decrease every single week with every single survey and poll that comes out. Meanwhile, his rival Benny Gantz and others have seen their favorability numbers skyrocket. If elections were to be held today, Prime Minister Netanyahu wouldn't be Prime Minister Netanyahu. At best, he'll be opposition leader Netanyahu in the Israeli Knesset or parliament. So he's trying to deflect blame off of him. He's trying to fight back, push back the criticism from President Biden, saying that Israel will not have anyone dictate on its policies. And also he's claiming that he has a mandate, overwhelming mandate from the Israeli public, even though, again, latest polls and the thousands of people taken to the streets say otherwise, Charlotte.
And meanwhile, Mohammed, Israel's War Cabinet held a meeting late on Sunday to discuss issues including the incursion into Rafah and security at Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is very near where you are. What do we know came out of this meeting?
Well, the meeting discussed two topics, and it went on late into the night. Nothing public or a public statement were made available for the press, but it focused on the issue of increasing tension and maybe restrictions in occupied East Jerusalem because of the holy month of Ramadan beginning or starting today. No changes on that front. Israel has said that it will assess the security situation on a day-to-day basis. As far as the invasion or planned invasion of Rafah, mum is the word here. No details have been given, despite the fact that Netanyahu has said repeatedly, if a deal is struck between Hamas and Israel, this will only delay the invasion of Rafah. If a deal is not signed between the two, then we could expect this invasion to take place anytime soon, despite the 1.5 internally displaced civilians, Palestinians in Rafah, a city of only 200,000 150,000 prior to the war in Gaza. And despite the President Joe Biden saying that the Rafah invasion is a red line, it seems that Netanyahu is still intent on going through with his and going forward with his plan of invading Rafah. But no details have been given after the late night war cabinet meeting in Tel Aviv. Charlotte?
Okay, Mohammed Al-Qasem from occupied East Jerusalem, thank you. A US military